is Tom Cruise's short-lived NASCAR career. It ended.
Yeah, he handed it off to Jeff Gordon.
Way too early.
Well, he handed it off to Jeff Gordon. He gave his Power Stone to Jeff Gordon.
Yes, he did. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live, I say, on the Mark at the Moon YouTube channel. For those of us that would like to join, this might be a regular thing. We're doing bi-quarterly podcasts, people. Bi-quarterly podcasts. So set your calendars for, we're looking at July is probably going to be our next podcast. So set your calendars, get your calendar cleared out, and be ready for another episode 3 of the Mark at the Moon podcast. Today is episode 2, the 421 edition of the Mark at the Moon podcast. We have so much to talk about. Dirt racing and, some IndyCar testing, even though they've been getting rained out. And, of course, wrestling. We are still in the aftermath of WrestleMania, something that DM Punk and I have not gotten a chance to talk about, but we'll probably start off with some racing here today. But how are you today, DM Punk? DM Punk, is all well in DM Punk land?
I'm doing okay. I'm still recovering from my forbidden door being kicked open.
Oh my God, the forbidden back door. Another fucking.
No,
I mean, should we start with wrestling? We might as well. We'll probably end up talking about racing.
We should start with that. Give
a
Tony
fucking
his
landmark. We are live on
Tony
YouTube. I shouldn't curse, but a landmark announcement. And we all know that Tony Khan has never let anyone down with an announcement or an exploding match or anything. Tony Khan does not disappoint. He's never disappointed with a sports team. He never disappoints.
Rarely. It's very rare that he disappoints. I mean, he has Fulham just won the championship and gained automatic promotion to the Premier League last year. Really, quite honestly, it's like Tony Khan's birthday. It's popping and locking for him. I mean, things were looking down, and now things are looking right through the forbidden door.
We, of course, are talking about a major announcement that was announced. The announcement was announced, not the announcement, the actual announcement, but the announcement of an announcement to be taking place was announced on Twitter before Dynamite last night. And lo and behold, the announcement was that the Forbidden Door was officially opened. I know something that has been teased for quite a while on AEW television, but we finally figured out what the Forbidden Door is. We're, of course, talking about the Forbidden Door, the absolutely not to be spoken of door that is New Japan Pro Wrestling working with AEW, because none of us ever saw this happening or that this would ever transpire or take place. And lo and behold, Tony Khan does it again. He absolutely just continues to deliver on all fronts.
This is going to be bigger than when Eric Bischoff brought wrestling to Korea.
North Korea or South Korea? Which one? Which
both.
One was the? Both.
It was both. It was like a wrestling World's Fair. Well, a wrestling Korea's fair.
Yes, World's Fair, Wad's Fair. Yes.
Ric Flair was there. Man, probably some other people, but it was something, and I think that's what this is going to be. It's going to be something. No, this is a big deal. It's probably, I think arguably this is a bigger deal than the Ring of Honor thing, although Samoa Joe coming back and making the Ring of Honor thing a little more legit helped. But now that it's just kind of their NXT, that's it still leaves a lot of people on dark, like as soon as they debut. As Booker T said, I ain't coming from the big show. I ain't coming from WWE and then doing dark. Ain't happening.
And of course, Jay White debuting last night as the announcement of a cross-promotion pay-per-view was announced. And Jay White, who has already come out on AEW.
Did Jay White already debut in AEW?
He debuted twice. That's how big of a name he is. He got 2 debuts.
2 debuts? That's
yes.
Pretty amazing.
That's a double debut, as well as Adam Cole. And, of course, the fantasy bookers just flooded to Twitter to talk about possible matchups. I'm thinking Okada versus. Finish this sentence, DM Punk. Okada versus
CM Punk.
CM Punk. I'm thinking Danielson, possibly. Who do you think Danielson's going to be wanting to work with?
Surely they've worked together already. Surely Okada and Danielson have worked together in the past. Maybe not. If not, then they've got to work together. Hangman and man, I don't know, who is Bushi gonna fight. It all comes down to who works the pay-per-view, because it's probably going to be here, and so they're gonna have to be able to get travel visas and come over and do that stuff, and not everybody can, famously. That's why one of the big reasons that there is a Forbidden Door is famously a lot of times some of them can't get travel visas for whatever reasons, but Okada can.
I think they announced it. I think it's in Chicago. It's either in Chicago or Philadelphia. I'm pretty sure it's going to be. Let me look this up real fast.
Philadelphia, the land of Tony Khan's childhood, where he grew up watching ECW events live, even though he didn't grow up in Philadelphia at all. I mean, he was the son of a billionaire, but come on. Let's be honest.
He was and is.
Nobody's that cool at that age. Plus, he would have been younger than it doesn't make any sense. Pretty sure he just made it up.
Chicago.
He's hired a team. He's hired a team. No kidding. He's hired a team of people that are looking into his bot claims. If you haven't heard about his bot claims, he claims that most of, if not all, of the anti-AEW hate on Twitter and online in general is actually coming from bots that are being farmed by. He insinuates that it's WWE, but he doesn't outright say that. But he insinuates that it's WWE doing it.
Well, he implies that you would need a very large budget to be able to do something like this. So he basically is insinuating that it's either WWE or Elon Musk.
Yeah, I mean, nowhere in the history of time has there ever been a wrestling fan with a huge budget that has, affected wrestling in any way.
Never happened, not once.
Can't.
Absolutely not.
But also, I don't think that's real, and I think that Becky Lynch wins the response to the Tony Khan tweet, because her tweet was basically the same exact wording of his right back, but it was about how any anti-Becky stuff happening and was just also, just bots.
I do think a lot of the anti-AEW, I think a lot of the hold on one second. I think a lot of the anti-AEW stuff is bots, but I also think a lot of the pro AEW stuff is bots as well. So I think there's just a lot of bot activity going on.
I'm pretty sure. I feel like him saying that pretty much 100% confirms that he's doing that. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that he smelt it, dealt it applies here, is what I'm saying.
Well, you might be onto something there. Elsewise, with AEW, we see Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe probably. I mean, this sounds like such a ridiculous statement, but probably the most ridiculous angle to be involved in, possibly, in wrestling history, is the one that he's currently finding himself involved with. Just weeks after debuting, as you said, as kind of a boost for the Ring of Honor invasion angle that AEW is going through right now. You have Samoa Joe there, and currently getting the shit kicked out of him by a 7-foot-tall large Indian man. Generating the worst go-home heat I think I've ever... Like, the crowd, whenever that was happening at the end of Dynamite, when they came out there and started kicking the shit out of Joe, was just, like, such a bizarre crowd reaction. I mean, it was very flat, to say the least.
We joke about Tony Khan using the huge announcement button as much as Mick Foley uses the say the name of the town pop. But what he actually overuses is the turn the lights off, turn the lights back on. He has way over you. He used it 17 times in that first Matt Hardy promo, and so he well overuses that, and I don't think that gets enough. That gets said enough that he does that. So, I don't know. I think that that there's the tone has changed in the war between the companies, because now Tony is making excuses. He's in the making excuses and resetting expectations phase, because a year ago, July 28th, here's a tweet. AEW is winning the ratings war because literally anything can happen. It's absolute chaos, and you have to watch live to see what happens next. Okay, so that was July 28th of last year, and April 19th of this year. This is a tweet from the same. AEW ratings talk is so boring because no one really understands what a success and what a failure is. Comparing Rampage to SmackDown is apples and oranges. Success isn't measured against a show airing on a different day or time. I mean, those two have totally, that's complete. That's resetting expectations is what that is. That's 100% what that is. It's resetting, getting everybody back in to the, now we've got a new thing we're going to win. The old thing now, not possible. The new thing, though, we're going to start the Green Party.
Well, you got to reach for the stars, and then if you fall, you might land on a cloud or something. But
that's a good point.
It's very good.
No, I
point.
like that point. Yes. You might eat all the other independent wrestling companies one by one until Billy Corgan is just left cowering in a corner, naked, shaved.
Yeah, I mean, it's indie wrestling at a large scale that is basically destroying the indie wrestling scene. It's a very ironic thing, kind of what's happening with AEW, but maybe maybe it'll all work out in the end. I don't know.
Listen, with Control Your Narrative banning the super kick, okay, so Canadian Destroyer I can understand.
The Tope Suicida also not allowed.
Also banned. But the super kick, Control Your Narrative is now the new company to be. If you're in independent wrestling and you're not in Control Your Narrative, fuck you. No, I'm telling you, that is when they carried the guy out at the first show. It was the second show. At the second Control Your Narrative show, a guy does the super kick, and they do a bit where they come out and get the guy and they carry him out and stuff, and it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. Those guys get it. Those guys get being something different than WWE without, making it about how we're different from WWE.
In the meantime, taking in a lot of WWE talent, such as, did you recognize Vanessa Bourne last night from on AEW? Former NXT
she was
standout.
On AEW Dark, and she beat who'd she beat? She beat somebody else too, didn't she? No, I'm thinking of they had who had that Alejandra Lyon chick fought somebody.
Alejandra Leon. I've been on a few shows with her.
Yeah, that's I put her. Yeah, she was on Dark as well, I think.
Yeah,
but yeah. Which is, they should just, at this point, because of the way Tony Khan books, they should just call it AEW Women's. You know what I mean? That'd be nicer than calling it Dark.
You might be onto something there. Maybe we should pitch that.
Then at least everybody would know what they're in for, nothing wrong. I like women's wrestling, just Tony Khan doesn't, and so that's where he books it, Well, at first we thought it was Cody, and maybe it was to some extent, but now I think Cody's gone and it's gotten worse. Did something happen with Cody Rhodes?
I thought Omega booked the women's division.
I hope so.
Is that why Riho had the belt for 18 months?
I hope he does. I hope Kenny Omega books everything. The guy who's got 7 stars. Never made $1.
Speaking of 7 stars, yes, Cody Rhodes making his transition. Something that I really thought was the greatest work of all time Like, I thought this whole thing was a work. Like, the whole rumors of Cody going to WWE and just everything about it, I thought was a giant work. And I was impressed by, the magnitude of it. But then come to find out that, yes, indeed, Cody Rhodes has basically changed, gone to the bigger show, and is the biggest thing going on the big show now after being...
I mean, he opens Raw now.
After being an upper
He's
mid
opened
carder
every
at
Raw
best
since
at the other companies.
He's opened every Raw since he came back. So maybe they put that in his contract. But another thing they put in there and that I really like is no Brandy anywhere. Keep her off of this. Nothing. We just want Cody. No Brandy.
Well, they gotta leave a little window of something, because what's gonna happen?
There's a whole show. Just go watch it. Just every episode, watch it on repeat, because there won't be any more. No more of that. Did you hear in the podcast what actually caused him to give to decide to come back to WWE? He's doing this podcast the other day, and he's talking about, in the interview that he did on Raw. After WrestleMania, he talked about how his dad had this picture of him holding up the old Vince's dad's company, which was called WWWF. But it was like the New York territory. It was Vince. It was him holding that belt up one night when he had basically won the match, but by disqualification, and so Hulk Hogan got to keep the belt. But he had a picture of him holding that belt up, and he talked to his son about how much that belt meant and how he never got to have it and stuff like that. And that's why Cody wanted to come back. Well, in this podcast he's doing the other day, he said that the real story behind that is that Dan Lambert, the greatest, the rest of you guys might also know Dan Lambert is the greatest heel in AEW, possibly in wrestling, but definitely in AEW.
I thought he was a babyface.
And he's also the head of American Top Team in real life, the MMA team, so like Jorge Masvidal and those guys. He in real life found out that Cody that picture Cody told him that story basically. And when he was in AEW, and that guy owns that belt, the exact belt that Dusty's holding up in that picture. And he actually owned it because he had bought it at auction. He's a huge wrestling fan. He had bought it at auction. And he gave it to Cody. And when he said, when he gave me that, he didn't know it, but he made my mind up for me. That was it. I had to go back and win that belt. So that's him coming back, and that's his story now. He's got everybody gripped. Can he do it? Can he do it? First, he's got to get past Seth Rollins. Let's be honest. First, he's got to get past Seth freaking Rollins.
Yeah,
you have to
say it right.
Time. You have to say that every time.
Yeah, because that's his name.
Seth freaking Rollins.
It's such a. I can't imagine them putting Cody Rhodes over Roman Reigns, or like even really involving. Like, I could see maybe them wrestling each other at SummerSlam, maybe, even though it seems like they're gearing up for another Roman Brock match. But
bruh, are you kidding? He's totally going to be the guy that dethrones Roman.
Yeah, I just don't see it happening in the next calendar year. Like,
no, next year at Mania, 1 year from now, man, it's going to be the story. They're going to do one of those. This is WWE 24, and this is my life. And then you're like, the rest of the episode's about that, and it debuts after like the pay-per-view after that pay-per-view, and it's like, this is the Cody Rhodes 24 deal. After he won it last year, it took him a year, and he did it, and stuff like that. The only thing I'm sad about is he doesn't get to work with Pat McAfee that much.
Yeah, well,
but you got to spread your talent out.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. I think it's just odd, the mood shifting with so much talent right now. Sammy Guevara and Ty Conti just seemingly overnight taking all that leftover Rhodes heat from AEW is just like shifted to Ty Conti and Sammy Guevara. Although Sammy Guevara kind of brought it on himself, but it's just like, do AEW fans just hate couples in wrestling? Is there just some sort of deep-founded hatred?
I think it's just women. I think it's just women, just 100% women. I think it's yeah. I think it's just If you really just break it down, I think it's just women. Yeah. Like a lot, they didn't have a. Now I did. Don't get me wrong. I've always hated Sammy Guevara a lot, but they all loved Sammy Guevara until this, and then they all saw what I see in him, and that's just kind of a scumbag that kind of lucked into it. He's pretty good. But I mean, that's that could describe like everybody who's a wrestler. You know what I mean? Like, there's nobody that's just like, oh no, that guy, like, fuck, he went to the fucking Air Force Academy, graduated second. Fuck, you know what I mean? There's not a lot of guys like Bobby Lashley in wrestling. There's not a lot of people who are like, nope, straight arrow, never done a thing wrong, just a great guy, just absolute brick house of morality.
Like Lacey Evans.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, the weird thing with Sammy Guevara is like, yeah, he proposed to his girlfriend and then left his girlfriend for Ty Conti, but it's like everybody was aware of that as it was happening. And then they start, interacting as a couple on camera, and even that went on for a few weeks, and then it was just like over the past week or so. Well, I heard on Reddit last week that Sammy Guevara had a segment where he came out during the commercial break and was doing his cue card thing, and you couldn't tell on TV that people were booing because they were at a commercial break, but allegedly people were booing the entire time. And
I was booing. If they weren't booing, I was booing.
And then, of course, this week, they just went ahead and went with it, and then actually kind of turned him heel. And then Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page come out with Dan Lambert, and they kind of turned babyface, even though they're still working heel. It was a very interesting segment with like a whole lot to digest, to say the least.
Tony Khan's palate is complex and mature.
It's true.
And so are his consumers, and they can deal with subtleties and nuances of good and evil. So I think that we just maybe don't get like when I see those videos of them doing that stupid thing where they fucking do the flip arounds and the stuff and the whip-de-doos and stuff, at different locations, him and Tenar Conti. Like, I don't get that, you know what I mean? And so maybe that's just what it is. It's just like they don't get it thing. That could be like that.
It do be like that.
I feel like David Schultz would slap the shit out of him if he saw them doing that in public and taping it like that.
Well, I think he'd probably slap the shit out of them just on general principle. He seems very slap happy.
He is known for it. He's a bounty hunter now, I believe.
Yes. He's not slap happy the same way that Kenny Omega is slap happy.
Oh my. So anyway, now let's talk about racing. This dirt race happened, and I feel like we need to talk about why it was pretty good, and why now NASCAR is now going to build a purpose-built dirt track now. This is what they're going to do basically with North Wilkesboro. North Wilkesboro is formerly a place in North Carolina that had a track, and it's a really unique track. One of the straightaways is uphill and one of the straightaways is downhill, basically the way you race it. And it's a short track, and they were going to buy it and try to refurbish it. Well, it's really small. Well, that's okay. NASCAR doesn't have a lot of fans now, so really small. It's now actually that problem kind of fixed itself. But now they're going to, before they pave it, they're going to, at least for a little while, and I suspect forever, turn it into a purpose-built dirt track for a while. Thoughts?
Yeah, I've heard that being kicked around. I think Dale Jr. is kind of the one really kind of spearheading that entire movement. At least it kind of seems like. I really like the idea of them racing on dirt, but I wish that I actually like Bristol as a track, and so it sucks that they have to use a Bristol race.
Talk about Bristol though, last year it was 19 degrees banking all the way through. This year it was 16 degrees, except for at the very top where it was 19 degrees. And this year it was way fucking better racing than last. Now it's a totally different car as well with independent rear suspension and stuff. And so it's got the transfer, the basically the diff back there and stuff that's adjustable. And so that also gave it, a different feel, more of like a rally car kind of. But it also made for much better racing in the Cup race. Like the Cup cars do really good on this track. I don't think there's any way we're going to go back to having this race not be on dirt, unless everybody stops coming to it. And even then, I think they'll do it for ratings and stuff. I don't think we'll go back to having this race be on that. I don't think it'll switch but I could see it possibly switching. I could see it being this race being the pavement race and that race being. But the reason that I don't see it switching is because they do a bunch of other dirt races the 2 weeks before the NASCAR race, because that dirt is down on the track for a whole month, and they do a bunch of other races at this part of the year for that, and so that's why I don't see it switching to being the later race. But I certainly don't see it going away now. Since Bristol already does it, like I said, for the other series, for World of Outlaws and Modifieds and Super Modifieds and stuff like that. I just don't see them not now doing it for this, since it was such a good race the other day. And is going to get better. Like, it was such a good race for them just kind of throwing a dart in the dark and hitting it pretty close to the mark.
Yeah, I mean, last year's race was pretty much an unmitigated disaster, but it was kind of exciting.
Shit show.
Yeah,
it's a shit show.
But just seeing it happen, like, holy shit, this is actually happening, made it exciting.
It was like a 6 out of 10 test run. It was like if you go to a dress rehearsal and everybody barely got through above average through everything. You know what I mean? Like, just like it was just barely not, rushing, just right above the top right there, just a little above average.
But yeah, it was definitely a better race than the IndyCar race at Nashville. I will say that was probably the only worse race than that. But I mean, you could tell that they definitely learned a lot from it. And this race this year, yeah, way racier than it was the previous year. But again, just Mother Nature in general, kind of holding the race back, and it kind of would have been, this entire race would have had probably a different narrative around it if it actually would have gotten rained out and they would have had to ended it early,
I will say they need to continue to. I like everything about the new car, except for I wish they would scale it down a little bit, like make it just a 76th smaller. You know what I'm saying? Just a very, very small amount, just slightly smaller, because then at places like this and on the short tracks, I think there would be a lot better racing than there is. But as we found over the last few weeks, the racing excitement, at least weakness of the Cup car, is the short tracks with a lot of braking. If it's flat and it has a lot of braking, it's even worse. Martinsville, in the other two series, in trucks and in Xfinity, Martinsville was an absolute knife fight, and in the Cup race, it was like a Kentucky Derby at worst.
Sissy slap fight.
Yeah, it was. People had their gloves out.
Yes. That was a Kenny Omega reference for those keeping score at home. Yeah. I mean, this is obviously what NASCAR, the direction the NASCAR is going. Trying to get these niche events. You're seeing it with the Coliseum race, which is of course going to branch out into. They're already looking at different destinations that they could start doing these Coliseum races at. They're talking about Canada for next year, but I see them eventually going like across the pond, as they say, or possibly to Japan. I want them to race in Japan again at Suzuka. That's personally my fantasy race, but. You're seeing that NASCAR is going in this direction of having these niche races, and yeah, for that reason, I would say that dirt is probably here to stay, at least for the spring race at Bristol.
1,000% for sure. The Chicago thing's happening. The Chicago street race, the 1,000% for sure. The Chicago street race is happening. So there will be a street race on NASCAR's schedule after that. after a year or two of at least having one street race on there, there will be a lot more, because as soon as they figure out how to do street races with the cars and how to, make it a good race and not break a bunch of shit and stuff, a bunch of other places will be like, fuck yeah, we'll do that, no problem.
And that was the direction I was going. Is that that's definitely the direction they're wanting to do street races, because if they do Chicago, suddenly that opens the door for Long Beach, opens the door for the Miami GP if they can get over the legal hurdles.
New York City.
I mean, anywhere.
That's where they've always wanted to have a cup race in New York City, like in New York, and either in New Jersey where you can see New York, where you can see Manhattan across there, or actually, somehow down in either Manhattan or somewhere like it. But more likely the street course that Formula One had laid out last year that was in New Jersey, and you could see Manhattan across the river there, is what they would use. But that's a place they've always wanted to go. All those places would be instantly want to do that if that was what they wanted to do. I mean, and the same thing with dirt tracks. There's a lot of fucking dirt tracks across the country that would love to host a fucking NASCAR race. The place in Iowa, what the fuck is that place called? You know what I'm talking about? The place where they have the Iowa Nationals and stuff out there. That place would love to have a fucking NASCAR race, but it's just not. You know what I mean? The way that they currently do NASCAR races, except for this dirt race, that wouldn't work. But if we're going to start doing cup races like this dirt race, like we did, then open the floodgates.
Oh, most definitely. And as you were talking about earlier, they're basically converting North Wilkesboro into the NASCAR dirt track, because that's. I would like a.
Never
like
driven
a track,
it on dirt.
I would like a
I've
track
driven on racing on pavement.
Yeah, for sure. I took a drop week last week. I didn't even want to try to drive Xfinity, and I drive dirt, and I didn't want to even try to attempt doing a full 120 lap race on dirt in an Xfinity car. So.
Yeah, fuck that. That's fucking hard.
And that
shit's hard.
And I did the fucking Circuit of the Americas in the Xfinity car. I wanted no part of the Bristol Dirt.
Well, at least at the Circuit of the Americas place, like, you know when you're about to get run over. Like with this, it just could come from any direction. You know what I mean? Like everything could be going perfectly, and it could still come from any direction. Whereas at least with the Circuit of the Americas, people are looking ahead for you, and you're looking behind a bit for them, and you're just kind of otherwise racing the track. So that seems a lot more doable. Like it seems like it's probably harder, probably technically quite a bit harder, but much more survivable. Yeah.
Speaking of sissy slap fights, probably the most anticlimactic post-race confrontation that we've seen in quite some time.
You mean after Chase Briscoe completely just wrecked out Tyler Reddick, who was about to get his first Cup Series win in the last corner of the last turn, so that Kyle Busch could literally, with a Hamburglar mask on, drive by and steal the race? Wow. Yeah, that was... And then he comes over to him, and they got the camera there. They're basically, they're got mouthpieces and stuff. They're about to put gloves on him. And then Tyler Reddick's like, "Hey, man, I'm really tiny. Chase is really tall. That's just racing, guys. I just wanted to shake your hand. I just want to shake your hand. I just want to shake your hand. Let's hug." Chase Briscoe, embarrassed that he's so that he just ran out of talent in that last corner. Not one. Yeah, I wrecked him on purpose. Yeah, that's what I did. I didn't just crash. Yeah. He was like, "Thanks for the hug, man. I really appreciate you letting me off the hook, because I thought I was about to get a 98 mile an hour like Rolo to the face, whatever. I don't know how Tyler Reddick's hands would be so small. I don't know what kind of candy they would be like, but they would be like a soft, chewy candy, perhaps a Rolo.
Yeah. Everybody on NASCAR broadcast team was talking about, I bet he walked over there expecting to get a punch in the face. Like, dude, Tyler Reddick wasn't going to do anything. Like, I literally
Tyler Reddick's parents haven't been in a fight since they were in the Wizard of Oz with the rest of them, the Munchkins, And when they at that when they I saw that when they were at that, they got in fights and stuff, but got it all out of their system. Now they're all good Christian midgets now, every one of them.
Oh, Lollipop Guild Reddick. Yeah, I don't think he's like physically able to punch Chase Briscoe in the face. Unless Chase Briscoe literally would like bent down and just like gave him his chin, like that would be the only way something could have happened.
Somebody come here and get my pedal extensions off for me so I can hit this guy.
They're like, oh, he walked over with his helmet off. Like, hey, if I want to do this, I'm gonna have my helmet off. Like,
I guess in his car though, he does have a permanent weapon. He has that huge phone book that he sits on.
That's true.
And so that's how they fixed his seat earlier this year. You know, he was cutting off the stuff to his leg in the first few races and everything. They just put a bigger phone book in there. He was able to see over the steering wheel better, and it was okay.
IndyCar testing started today. I was trying to watch it, but it got rained
Started
out.
yesterday.
Yeah, it did start yesterday. I was trying to.
Castroneves had a huge wreck. They're back. They're going to be on the back foot now.
That was a bad wreck. Did he
It
walk?
was.
Did he
He
walk
was
away
okay.
from that? Wow.
Yes, he's okay. He's okay, and he's ready to go back and do it again. But the problem is now they can't really do that because they're not a huge funding team, and so that's gonna cost them a lot of money. At least, I mean, it's a total. Every single piece of that. If they sell some of it like on, eBay for collector's pieces, maybe they'll get some of the money back. But all that was destroyed, like Detroit.
That wasn't even the most hazardous part of the day, as there were several spinouts as drivers were trying to exit the pits. Will Power, of course, being the most notable one, because he actually posted his in-car dash camera on Instagram, and yes, that indeed looked very, very hairy.
Well, it's because everybody is going to be working on for the rest of until the field is set. Everybody's going to be working on their qualifying setups, and you go out with such a cambered off, cocked to the left, or cocked, like the rear tire is extremely cocked up in the air and to the left, and so when you're on a flat area, going slow, especially if you don't know, Indianapolis that circles the entire track, has a runoff area that's to enter the pits. So you're supposed to, like, during the race, you enter the pits off of turn 4, like right when you come off of there. But if it's under caution or anything like that, you can enter the pits off of before you enter turn 3 and on the backstretch and stuff. You can basically come onto a road back there. When you're on and when you're on that coming out, it's really flat there, and so the way the car is cocked over like that, it puts all of the weight over onto the left rear, where normally it's not sitting, because normally the track's so flat and they're going 200 miles an hour. There's a lot of side force pushing to the right and laying the car back down onto the now flat from the side force tires that way. But when they're not, and they're going slow and they're on flat stuff like that, it really wants to take off to the left, and a lot of guys are trying to get some heat into the tires there so that they can get a good outlap and stuff, and a lot of people spin out there. It's always happened, it always will. Like, it's just the nature of such a flat track for how such a high speed track.
And especially the pit exit is just incredibly flat. Like, I know anytime I race it on iRacing,
I mean, it's like it's like it was created by a computer. It's a flat, like it really is. Well, I mean, it's like a golf course flat. You know what I'm saying? It's like the greens at the Masters. I know they roll and stuff, but what I'm saying is the profile of it is completely the same everywhere. So perhaps there is some banking down there, but it's not what it is out there. And like I said, the main deal is that you're going so slow, and so with the car being cocked like that, the car finally does lay over on that left rear tire where it's never normally touching. And so when you hit the gas, all it wants to do is just turn left, just go left. And so it happens in NASCAR. We at Martinsville on the backstretch. or at Richmond on the backstretch, not Martinsville, at Richmond on the backstretch, because Richmond kind of, even though it's a short track, it's kind of a tri-oval, and so the front stretch is like a big arcing left turn that you make up against the wall, and then you go down into the other, you brake and go down into the other turn, roll through it, and then you try to get back to the gas on the backstretch, which is actually straight. And it's the same way. It's so flat, and the car is set up so cocked to the left for the short track in Richmond, like that, to go, slow fast. That you when you finally do get back there on the backstretch, especially on old tires, it just wants to take off to the left on you.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you?
It has happened to me a number of times. I really do not like driving in the virtual world on the Indianapolis Super Speedway. What do you think I heard somebody kicking around this idea on Reddit. Like, what do you think of the potential of building a barrier between, like, going into turn one and the pit lane right there to make it safer, to where if you did spin out, that at least
you would hit the wall there.
Yeah, you wouldn't just go straight into oncoming
onto
traffic.
the track. Yeah.
So, I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine if, like, anybody would have clipped Will Power coming out of that? Like, that would have been horrifying, especially for the first day of testing after Helio Castroneva's already wrecked his car.
Well, look up Alex Zanardi wreck online if you want to know what that would look like if that happened.
Yes, I've seen it. It's not pretty.
1996, I believe. Alex Zanardi at a circle track in Germany, but I believe it was a kart race. But anyway, the predecessor to IndyCar. They believe he does it, but I believe Tagliani hits him. But either way, he slides out like that, and somebody hits him like that, and he lost both of his legs from the knees down, and he nearly died. If the guy literally hadn't pulled his belt off and put both of his legs in tourniquets, he probably would have bled out at the scene, certainly before he got to the hospital. And they airlifted him. And, I mean, he still, nearly died, because there was nothing. It wasn't like they had to cut off what was left of his legs. Like, there was nothing below his knees that even remotely looked like legs anymore when he got hit at that speed from that. So, and Indianapolis would be faster there. So, yeah. No, I mean, it's a pretty good idea, but
probably not going to happen.
I don't think so. I don't think it's not going to happen until what we just talked about happens.
Yeah.
As soon as that happens, then it might happen. You know what I mean? I don't know. Roger Penske owns Indianapolis Motor Speedway now. He owns IndyCar. He owns all that. So he may have a different view on this, and he may do things differently. He's a really, really rich guy, and he can do anything he wants pretty much.
Yes, that's a good thing about being rich. Just do anything you want. You can just buy a wrestling promotion.
Nah, you can't do that. You have to be a very acumen businessman to do things like that.
Yes, of course. Formula One, Imola. What was the meme that I sent you the other day of, like, the 7 words that they used for the race or whatever?
I honestly don't know the whole name for the race. It's so long.
It's like a paragraph. The actual name of the race is a paragraph, people, if you guys want to look it up.
This is going to be, I believe, an extremely... Red Bull should make some ground up here. Like, they could, if they can finish the race, they should probably win this race, since they'll both have fresh engines and everything should be good. But this is a high-speed track, and that's where they seem to have a little bit of an advantage. However, Ferrari are bringing their first upgrades to a car that is already miles ahead of everybody else. So as long as these upgrades work, which they tested some of them at Australia and didn't use them, but didn't plan to use them. Like, they had planned to do the testing there and then implement them and then change them a bit and then implement them at this track. And so if everything goes as planned and they make an already better car, then they should be already even further ahead. But this is a high-speed track, and so like I said, I think it is going to favor Red Bull a little bit more. Carlos Sainz just signed a new deal, so him and Leclerc are there through 2024. I think that's a power move to the other teams because it kind of says, okay, now what can you guys do? Because they're the I don't know. It really puts the onus on the other teams now because they now have to produce a car because they can't. I don't know. I think they have to produce a car and they now have to spend more money on drivers because now Ferrari has said, okay, so we're ahead. We're going to give these guys deals, set the new market for pay. And now also you guys are all going to not only have people fighting over this, but you're going to have the onus to prove it with your car and to step up to the plate and pay people. So it could the driver's salary is not included in the salary cap. So that they can spend whatever they want on that.
That's interesting. And that's interesting they would sign signs like that because I mean not really throwing shade at Carlos Sainz, but it's like if Ferrari is really contending for a world championship, I mean you would maybe think that they would maybe think about who else they could possibly get for a number 2 seat because we all know Leclerc's not going anywhere, but. Oh.
That's the way I feel, but I don't think that's the way everybody at Ferrari or everybody that's a Ferrari fan feels. But that's the way I feel too. I feel the same way. It's like, okay, well, I mean, we could bring in Mick, you know. Now Mick essentially knows he's got to like stay at Haas through 2024 at least, because he doesn't want to go somewhere else and then end up in a worse car if that's what happens. And so, yeah, I felt the same kind of felt the same way. But if a lot of people feel differently, and a lot of data shows that Sainz is real good, and he's real good. He's probably is better than we think he is I think what it is. I think that he's never really been in the best car. He's never been in the best car until now. He really hasn't. So. Another interesting note I will point out is one more DNF for Max, and I don't think there's any possible way that he can win the championship.
Yeah, and we are still like incredibly early in the season, and
I don't think there's anybody besides Max that's gonna beat Leclerc because right now Leclerc by himself leads the constructors championship.
it's crazy what a difference a year can make. You know, I was thinking. Last year, like, oh my God, this season's going to be way crazier than the previous season, which is the craziest season ever. But now it's like, oh, Leclerc is just fucking running away with this thing, like. And yeah, Max is just we're returning to a track that he had a DNF at last time around, so it's like, you know, granted he basically wrecked himself in that situation, but yeah, I mean. He's pretty much, even this early in the season, he's like one DNF away from basically being out of contention for a repeat as champion. So some weird and wild stuff. I'm still holding out for Lewis Hamilton though. I think Mercedes has something up their sleeve. They've just been calculating the right moment. Been waiting for this European run to really show the world what they got.
Playing that Putin long game is what they're doing.
Meanwhile, Hamilton's thinking about becoming the next Tony Khan and buying a Premier League team.
Yeah, what are the kids? How TF you gonna be an Arsenal fan and then be linked to maybe buying Chelsea? Like straight up needs to lose his Arsenal card no matter what happens, whether he buys Chelsea or not. If he had an Arsenal card before, if people hadn't already kicked him out for some other reason, he needs to lose his Arsenal card right there because that is no.
Well, it's a long game. You know, you buy Chelsea, and then you put Tony Khan in charge of it, and then
Tony Khan's already an owner in the Premier League now.
Well, exactly.
Because Fulham won the league outright, the championship outright yesterday, and so they are now the automatic bid to get into. There's 2 automatic bids and then a playoff, and that's the 3 teams that go to the Premier League from the championship. It's not like that in the Premier League, but in the Championship, it's 2 automatic bids and a playoff. And so, but the first automatic bid and the team that won the league is the farthest team ahead. They are so far ahead now that nobody can catch them with, I think 8 games left, 7 games left. But either way, they're pretty good. They have a huge budget compared to the other teams. I'm a fan of another team in that league, so Cardiff City, not as big of a budget. Get the ass whooped by 'em.
Well, Tony's been. It's good to see that Tony's not spending all of his money on bots and is actually dipping some of that back into his football club.
I don't think the two have to be mutually exclusive. I think he can do both.
Yeah, especially when you have that much money.
It is a lot of money.
All right, DM Punk. I think it was good that we were able to get this 421 edition of the Mark at the Moon podcast out of the way. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll probably have the next one up around July, so mark your calendars right now. Go ahead and put that in your Google Sheets. DM Punk, what do you have to say to these people ahead of a Talladega as well as an Imola racing weekend?
I do him an egg. That's a pretty good weekend. That's a pretty good race right there. Both of those races. All of the series are at Talladega, which is I like when it's trucks, Xfinity, and Cup Series. They all can parade before me.
Yes, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready for those Monday morning Mickey Mouse tweets after Talladega. That's really the number one thing that I have to look forward to over next week.
Looking forward to a noose-free Talladega this year.
Yeah. Noose and approved. Talladega Speedway. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Mark at the Moon podcast. Subscribe to us on Instagram for more content, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, everybody. Peace out.